Welcome to another episode of Coffee with Convery. Today we're joined by a remarkable guest, Kareem Brochu, the president of the Canadian Association of Business Students, also known as CABS. With over 70,000 business students under his leadership, Kareem's strategic prowess and financial acumen have propelled CABS to new heights. As president, Kareem is not only responsible for developing and executing strategic plans, but also for overseeing operational efficiency, identifying growth opportunities, and ensuring financial progress. His extensive experience in sales, customer service, and management has honed his ability to optimize practices and drive performance. Behind his role with CABS, Kareem's journey is a tapestry of leadership roles and in community service. From representing Telfer undergraduate students at the Presence to establishing the first ever student insurance plan in Montreal, Kareem's impact is felt far and wide. So let's join and delve into Kareem's journey together, explore his insights into leadership, finance, community engagement. So let's get ready for that inspiring conversation filled with valuable lessons and perspectives. Kareem, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. Pleasure to be here.
Excited to have you. So why don't we get started with a few get to know you questions for the audience, starting with what are your pronouns?
My pronouns are he, him.
Okay. Superpower. What's your superpower?
I would say I'm a very determined person. So when I set my mind to something, I will work really hard to reach the goals I need to.
So determination, determined, awesome superpower. Okay, this question I like because I get so many different responses, but do you have a favorite smell?
That is a good one. I would say it's a toss-up between the smell of coffee. Nothing beats the smell of coffee in the morning, especially. And then also, I'm thinking like the smell of a bakery,
Mm,
like cookies or scones or something that have just been baked fresh. That's it's pretty unbeatable.
yeah, no, that's both those smells are awesome, and I didn't eat lunch yet. I'm starving, so this is really getting me going. But good choices. What's the best compliment you've ever received?
The best compliment I have ever received. Hmm. I would say this is an odd one, but I mean, I have brown eyes and um, I don't often get compliments on that. I feel like people with brown eyes, we don't even get noticed. It's
That's
unless they're
true.
blue eyes or something special. So when I received a compliment once on the color of my eyes, that was a pretty nice one because it's the first time that that's ever happened.
That's true. I have brown eyes too. Like you never hear anybody saying anything
Yeah,
about
no, no
it,
one ever wants
right?
to compliment our eyes.
Well, that's a good compliment then. There you go.
Hmm.
We all have sort of some snacks or guilty pleasures we like to snack on. What is yours?
I would say dried mango. I love that as a the go-to.
Dried mango. That is
Yeah,
and that's a healthy snack,
we try.
right? That's awesome. That's awesome. Favorite
Yeah.
subject in school?
Favorite subject actually differs from probably what we'll be talking about today, but I'd say it's chemistry.
Chemistry. Okay,
Yeah,
awesome. We all start somewhere, right? We all start with our very first job, depending on what that is. But what was your very first job that you remember?
my very first job was I guess it would have been camp counselor when I was in high school.
Okay, okay,
Yeah.
nice. Like overnight camp, day camp? What was
Oh no, 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 not overnight. Day camp.
day camp?
Yeah,
Okay.
it was a soccer camp actually.
Oh, very cool, very cool. So sports as well. If you had to describe yourself in just one word, what would you pick?
I would say I am ambitious.
Awesome.
I am at a young point in my career right now where I'm kind of looking for my learning steps. So yeah, definitely ambitious right now.
That's a good way to be. Good way to be. Okay, so let's jump into your story and share with the listeners a little bit more about you and your journey you've been on. Can you take us back to the beginning, like where originally you're from, and then like what initially sparked your interest in business and finance?
Definitely. So I am born and raised in Montreal. My interests at first were very much into sciences and kind of pursuing some kind of a career in the medical field. Um, but it was actually through my involvement with um, just different organizations and different clubs that I kind of piqued my interest in business and more specifically finance. Um, so I'd say the interest wasn't so much sparked by my classes, but really the engagement that I was um, involved in as an extracurricular, and kind of learning the back end of managing a budget, managing finances for a club, and also just leadership and management of a team.
Awesome. And I always am curious because a lot of the listeners may be, making decisions of where to go this fall or thinking about, what majors to take and what to do. And, as we were getting started earlier, I told you it's so many different variables that come into play. But how did you
Yeah,
navigate that process of selecting your university and majors, and what kind of things like factors influenced you on that decision?
yeah, great question. So, like I said, my interests at first were very much related to sciences and kind of pursuing something there. But um, through my involvement with different clubs and organizations, I knew I had a pretty strong interest in finance and in business, but I wasn't sure yet. So when I was in college in Quebec, I studied in sciences. But then when it was finally time to choose my major, I decided to branch off, try something completely different. And I was definitely scared at first because all of my high school and college um, was put towards, I had put all this energy and then all these hours
Sure.
studying sciences. So to drift off from that was definitely scary. But I knew that I had a pretty strong interest from the things that I was passionate about with the organizations that I was working with. So I, took a leap of faith and dived into going for a bachelor's of commerce degree. The reason why I ended up choosing Ottawa was because I was fortunate to be in the PAGE program, which
Okay.
accepts 40 Canadians every year, first year university students, to get to work right in the chamber at the House of Commons
Wow.
in Ottawa. But in order to do that, you need to be studying at one of the four universities in the area. So my plan at the time was to go for a year, get to do this once in a lifetime opportunity, and then maybe switch back and I'd kind of reassess. But after doing that for a year, I loved Ottawa. I loved the school that I was at. I loved working at Parliament. So I said, you know what, let me stay here until the rest of my degree. And I'm really fortunate that I was able to do that.
What a fascinating, wow, that's so cool. What a fascinating journey you've been on already. Like, man, what a cool job to be doing too, working there. It must be super exciting and inspiring and all
Definitely.
that. So let's talk. I know you're the president of CAPS, which I told you I've worked a lot with them over my lifetime working with young people. A great
Yeah.
organization. Could you give our listeners a brief overview of what CAPS is and what's the mission?
Definitely. So CABS, the Canadian Association of Business Students, is really this sort of parent organization that works with business student associations all across the country. So we've got member schools, we call them, from as far west as you can imagine, and then even as far east, and then plenty in between. And so what we do is throughout the year, we put on different opportunities for students. We have our pillar conferences that we host. And then we also have a big national case competition that we host. So these conferences and case competitions are really geared for um, student leaders, uh, business student leaders, of course, who are either involved with their student associations on campus already or who are looking to get involved. And then we're also kind of trying to find new ways to work with um, just regular students who might not even know about their business student association on campus, but are looking to hone some of their leadership skills and develop them further. So that's kind of the approaches that we are trying to go for. And then from that, like I said, we host a number of different opportunities for them.
Awesome. And what if someone's interested in getting involved in CAPS? Is it something to just look into from their school side, or how does that happen?
Definitely. So there's a number of different ways to get involved with the organization. The way that I kind of got involved was through being involved with my student association at the
Sure.
University of Ottawa first. But you can go directly to us just as a regular student. There's many different opportunities to be involved. So you can join to be one of our directors to be on
Okay.
the team, or you can be on a program team. So program teams are what we call the committees that are formed for a specific conference or competition. So if you're interested, let's say in the national case competition that we host every year, you can apply to be on that program team and help organize that and eventually run it in January.
Awesome. Thank you. Thanks for sharing a little bit more about
Of
it.
course,
What inspired you to take on the role of president? That's a big job, I would imagine.
certainly is. I'd say, I want to be very transparent and kind of say that it was something that was pretty daunting. And so I don't just want to
Sure,
say that it was something that was an apparent decision for me to make or an easy decision, because I think that, out of fairness to the people listening, I
sure.
want to give them an honest account of that experience. So I, was worried. At first, I had been involved, like I said, with my student association on campus, but that was managing our students. So I had heard about CABS and I worked with CABS in my role as president of the Telfer Student Association. But in order to kind of step in as CABS president, I felt confident, I guess, in my knowledge of the organization.
Yeah.
I had been a member of the board for CABS as a board of director for 2 years at that point. Um, I had also, like I mentioned, been the president of my student association, and then I was also in my last year the captain of our um, case competition team at the University of Ottawa, and so I had a pretty solid understanding of both the national case competition and the different conferences. And the big kind of push that led me to make that decision to go for president was really the team that was also running. There was a lot of really, really great qualified people who
Okay.
were running to be elected and in the VP roles. And so, feeling confident that with this exceptional team kind of coming in the new year, that I'd be able to successfully accomplish what I needed to do and complete my mandate was definitely the final push that I needed to go for that role. But definitely something that was daunting first.
Yeah, I can only imagine. And thank you for the transparency and the
Of
authenticity,
course.
right? Because when you sign up for these things, there's a lot of emotions and ideas and thoughts that I would imagine run through your head, and processing all that and then saying, okay, I'm in. Like, it's a process, right? So it
Mhm.
makes sense. Let's talk a little bit about networking. I mean, networking is obviously a crucial role for people in career advancements and building their networks and understanding different things about industry sectors and meeting people along the way. How have you approached this idea of networking? Any advice or thoughts to share with some other students?
Yeah, I would definitely say, well, for one, like many, I'll always stress the importance of networking and putting yourself out there, because you really never know what a connection can bring you later down the line. Um, but one thing maybe you know, to target some of our younger audience members, I'd say for those who, have never networked before, are nervous or scared, maybe you're not an outgoing person, um, and then you really don't know where to start. One like really big piece of advice that I could give is to start small. And what I mean by that is, you know, let's say you're going and buying a coffee, just striking a conversation with the person who's serving you, trying to have a bit of a small talk with them, like instead of just making it a transaction, a back and forth. If you're in an Uber or in a taxi, have a bit of a conversation with the driver. For one, it'll probably make their experience servicing you better, and two, it'll help you kind of get familiarized with those small conversations, having small talk. And then when the time comes where you're actually at a networking event or you're looking to make connections at work, you won't feel so awkward and timid about having those first few conversations with someone who's a stranger to you. So I'd say really start with small little interactions that you can do and then maximize that wherever you can. Wherever you're working or any kind of transaction that you're doing, there's always an opportunity to have a bit of a conversation with someone.
I love that angle, and thanks for sharing those thoughts and ideas because it's super insightful you know, around networking and also not making it such an inanimate object. Like I have to go network, right? Like just what you said, talk to the barista, talk to
Exactly.
your Uber driver. I even look at things like barbecues and different things that you go to. You can meet some really interesting people if you just start the conversation
Definitely.
about who are they and what do they like to do. So no, thank you. Great thoughts there. It's great advice. Obviously, the next thing from networking comes a mentor. And some of us have had mentors for various reasons in our life and our career. For you, how have mentors played an impact on your journey? And how's that influenced sort of your thought process?
Yeah. So I've been really fortunate to have some pretty great mentors in my life. And a couple that are coming to mind were people who were leading either a similar organization or one of my mentors' cases was a former leader of cabs. And the mentors that I'm thinking of specifically were really great in being transparent with me on some of the difficulties that they faced and really the adversity that they had to deal with. I find that what I gain the most from is mentors who don't just kind of paint me a perfect picture of how their time and the experience was and then kind of lay out a path for what I should follow, but instead are really honest about the difficulties that they faced, how they overcame those difficulties, and the impact that it had on them. So I think that that's something that sometimes gets neglected
Sure.
in different roles. So, anyways, the mentors that I found really impactful on my life were the ones that gave me honest feedback about their experience, and then also were someone who I could call up and would tell me the honest truth if they thought that that what I was doing wasn't necessarily the best decision. I really appreciate having sound voices in my life who I can turn to, who I know won't sugarcoat things and let me know if they disagree with an approach.
It's perfect. Yeah, it's an interesting too, when you think about it, how, also with mentors, sometimes people think that mentors have to be, significantly older and sharing. I think the mutually beneficial, no matter what age, whatever background, and just that respect, right? To have those conversations you've had is what really creates a mentorship that's really working. So
Yeah,
thank you for sharing that too, because I think it's another thing that as people are looking for that or want to make a career shift, someone who's maybe in that industry sector or experience could be a great networking opportunity, which may lead to a mentoring opportunity as well. So
exactly. Yeah.
yeah, thanks for sharing that. With your diverse backgrounds in various roles and industries, what advice do you have for students who may be thinking about different career paths or considering unconventional career opportunities or trajectories?
Yeah. So for one, I've always been a pretty big advocate for co-ops. So I'll just kind of throw that out there, but that's a given.
Yeah.
I hope, anyways.
Thanks for
Like
bringing that up. Yes, I agree.
um, so definitely look into what co-op program you have at your school and kind of what opportunities are available there. Great to also look at partner universities or partner institutions that your university might be working with to kind of get a better sense of what placements you might get.
Yeah.
Um, Now, for some maybe more unconventional career trajectories, because I appreciate that and the complexity that that could bring, I would say really don't underestimate how beneficial and how impactful getting involved with some of those extracurriculars on campus could be. Um, at the University of Ottawa specifically, we've got some great clubs and organizations who have been there for years. And there's constantly alumni who are coming back, looking at the club, looking for people to help lift up. So whether you were an exec or you really performed well in one of the case competitions with one of the clubs, there's often, like I said, alumni who are coming in looking for people to recruit. So your involvement with, let's say, the marketing club at the
Hmm.
University of Ottawa could easily, help you land something that, you know, someone in co-op might not even have an opportunity to get because it's not an affiliation with the university, but it's through an alumni.
Right.
I would say there's a lot of opportunities like that that people don't realize, especially coming out of high school. They kind of associate university clubs and organizations as a similar thing to high school clubs, but it really is a whole different ballgame in terms of the network that it gives you access to. You really can't imagine how many strong alumni will be in different clubs and are really looking for people who they recognize a bit of themselves in.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Really great advice. Um, we all, we all love to talk about success and opportunities and things we've done throughout our career, which I think is super important. But we also learn a lot by obstacles and barriers and things that we might have to overcome. Do you have anything, maybe a pivotal moment in your career or a challenging situation that you had to overcome and maybe what you learned from it?
Definitely. So thinking maybe to my involvement with student organizations and kind of that involvement with my college, my university, and then now with CABS, I would say two things really come to mind. The first one is the first time I had to deal with harsh criticism from students. And so I'll kind of paint a bit of a picture on that one. In the role of a student leader, especially in a university or a college, your shareholders are really the students. And so at the end of the day, you're answering to them. And students are also at a point where um, they often come in with doubts with student organizations. They're paying these funds, but the access to information on where these funds are going, access to budgets, all kinds of things, it always kind of feels a little bit like inaccessible to students. So there's often a doubt at the back of students' minds. Um, and so with student leaders, it can be really hard to sometimes advocate and defend so many students and then kind of answer to all of them like you would in a company. So the first time that I had to deal with some harsh criticism from students who, you know, were unsatisfied with the decision that our council had voted on or something of the sort, it was definitely tough because you try your best, you do as many verifications as you can, you debate things, and then you allocate funds as the committee sees fit. But um, having to kind of be almost like a mini politician, really, at such a young age is definitely something that's hard. And having to deal with that adversity and the criticism that you'll get from students is pretty unique. I think, sometimes, especially having worked at the House of Commons, I was working with politicians all the time. And with them, their shareholders were their constituents. Um, in your case, it's your classmates.
Right.
So someone who might be frustrated with your decision could also be a partner in your group that you've been assigned in your finance class. So it's a bit of a unique opportunity where you really can't escape it, because at the end of the day, you can't just decide I'm not going into work today because it's been a hard day, or my shareholders are pretty mad at me, so I'm going to take the day off, because you have to go to class, and so you're going to see them no matter what, whether you have your suit on for your role or not. Um, so that's definitely something that was really hard at first to deal with. Navigating that, being able to set boundaries for yourself and then for others, and when you were in your role as a student leader and when you were just being a student, was definitely hard for me to navigate at first. The second thing I would say is having to um, advocate for students when it meant um, defying what the faculty wanted. Um, it's definitely something that could be really challenging and daunting. And I know for me, the first time um, it was one of those moments where, you never want to be a student who's having to kind of get into any kind of an argument or a disagreement with your faculty, because you have all these preconceived notions of what that might do in terms of your student account and how that could jeopardize that. So being in a role where you're really the only person who can advocate for these students, you have to wonder, well, if I'm not going to be the one to advocate for them, and if I'm not going to be the one to go back and forth with the faculty, who's going to defend them right now? So having to do that the first time, I'd say, was really challenging for me. I definitely had to put myself out there, but what kind of always kept me grounded, um, and I'd say what always kind of reminded me of the role that I was in, was knowing that I was elected not to have a title on my resume or on my LinkedIn, but I was elected to represent these students and to advocate for them. I always say to any new student leaders that the biggest responsibility that they will ever have. It doesn't matter how many access to funds, how large their access
Yeah.
to funds are, or how many different student employees are working under them. The biggest responsibility that they'll ever have is being that advocate for students. Um, and knowing that, at the end of the day, these students are coming to you with their concerns, and it's your job to defend their rights, the faculty. So always reminding myself of that um, helped me when I was coming into these really intense meetings with the
I
faculty or the
bet.
university and kind of unsure. But yeah,
Yeah, wow. And also wonderful for you. Congratulations. I mean, that's also wonderful skills that you've learned by
definitely.
I don't want to say playing because it sounds like you're acting, but being in these roles, which actually is life skills to help you take you further. And
Yeah.
it's always difficult sometimes when you're in a school environment and things, and then you venture in and you see some of the nuances and some of the way things get conducted, and having that ability to think and navigate that for you is incredible, and like life skills that are going to take you everywhere. So that's awesome. Although it might not
Thank
have
you.
felt awesome at the time, it's awesome now that you've been through some of
Yeah,
that. It builds character, as they say.
absolutely.
So thinking about other students, because I know a lot of students ask me about leadership and getting into clubs or extracurricular. I'm a big fan too. I think it's another way to bridge your experiences, your life journeys, your exploration of new things. You never know who you're
Yeah.
going to meet on a court, or in an extracurricular, or on the field, or whatever that may be. But do you have some advice for maybe other students interested in taking on leadership roles? Because obviously you have to balance that academia and the extracurricular, obviously time management skills. But what advice would you have for a student considering the idea?
Yeah. I would say the very first thing that you can do is just to put yourself on the mailing list of the clubs or organizations that you're interested in on campus.
Okay,
Um, Especially as a new student coming in at the start of the year, so many clubs are asking for mailing lists, or they're just basic information on students so that they can contact them throughout the year. And then many students just don't do it. They feel really overwhelmed. It is an overwhelming time at the start of the year, especially. But many students don't do that. And then, in 5, 6 months, they feel ready to actually get involved with clubs, but they have no access to information because they're not on any mailing list, and they have to try to find the offices. Now, hopefully, with things, being pretty much back to full in person, it's a little bit easier to go to some of these organizations' offices. But especially, in the last few years when things had moved to a virtual setting, it could have been really difficult to get access to these clubs or organizations and to get involved with them. So I would say the second you have an opportunity to get on some mailing list of a club, right?
yeah,
Not of these big external organizations, but campus clubs. You're interested, let's say, in humanitarian work. So you decide, I'm gonna. There's this club that does a humanitarian trip every year. I don't think I'm ready right now to know all about it, but let me put myself on the mailing list, and then in a few months, I can, actually spend the time to sit down and read about it, contact maybe one of the executives, learn more about it, and then maybe I can go on this trip in a year or two. I can't say enough how much it means to have access to that information. So whatever you can do to maximize your ability to have access, you got to do it.
some great ideas. Um, I have, let's see, one I always love to ask this question of my guests too is, if you could go back in time and give your younger self one piece of advice, what would it be?
Um, hmm. I would honestly say that it would be to uh, not be scared to take on extra opportunities. Um, I always tried to do that, but I, remember that some of the big opportunities that I did, I had doubts coming in, and
Sure,
um, that could have created a bit of a reservation at the start of an opportunity, or maybe created a situation where I didn't end up following through on some opportunity that was made available to me because of that doubt or
sure.
worry. So I would say really, really, for me to maximize any opportunities that came my way, because especially at a young um, point in your career, at a young age, you have um, so much time, so much room for error too. I'm thankfully still at a young enough stage of my life where I can still make mistakes and learn from those mistakes, and um, figure out what I want to do, especially with my studies. I felt like a mistake at first that I had pursued so much into sciences and chemistry and medicine, and then decided to pull a 180 and go into business instead. But I'm still really grateful for that. I'm grateful for what I learned in those classes. I'm grateful for the experience that it taught me. Um, the hardship too of having to do some of those tough science courses prepared me well for my business classes, even if I wasn't necessarily studying the same thing. So I would say that there's really no opportunity that you should restrict yourself from.
That's great advice. Thank you. And it's great advice to give yourself and give others that are listening today. Because, yeah, I think sometimes life can pass you by if you don't try. And we're our own worst critic, really, when it comes down to it, right? It gets in your head and you're
Yeah,
just It's trust me, I've been there too with a lot of things in my life and career, and you had to talk yourself out of it and say, "Go for it."
Exactly.
Even if you skin your knee, you learn something, right? So what a great. Well, this has been such an incredible conversation. I really have learned some new ideas myself about some things, and I hopefully our audience has as well. And I know we covered a lot of ground, but I just want to give you one chance because sometimes there's something else you, as we're talking, that comes to mind, or something that I didn't ask you that you wanted to share with the listeners. So I want to give you that opportunity if there's something else you wanted to say before we look to close.
Yeah, thank you for that. I'd say, as a final note, maybe to our listeners, um, really just take a moment to sit down, think of what your interests are. At a young age, I think we tend to think, okay, well, what employment am I going to choose to make sure that I can sustain uh, the living that I'm looking for. What job is going to get me to that, and then we kind of society, anyways, I think pushes us in that direction, and we don't often feel like we're allowed to make decisions about our career based off of our interests. I think that's something that we kind of learn later with life experience, and maybe doing a job that you didn't actually like, and you have to realize, in 5, 10, 20 years. So I'd say at this young age, if you're looking for what you're going to be doing for your job, really base it off of what you're interested in now. What classes do you enjoy? What do you want to learn more about? And then the worst thing that could happen is, you change your mind and you pursue another path, and that's okay.
Yeah. Wow. Wonderful, wonderful advice. Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure getting to meet you today and listen to your story. And thank you for being such an engaged
Likewise.
guest with so much information. It's been incredible to get to know you. So thank you for being a part of it.
Well, thank you, Brian. I really appreciate it.
Awesome. So, for our audience, if you like what you heard today, please share this podcast with your network. We're on Spotify and other podcast channels as well. You can also follow us on Coffee with Convery on Instagram and see all of the episodes that we have recorded and get links to those as well. This has been Coffee with Convery, and until next time, please stay well.